So Ryan, you've been doing a lot of work with organizations that have a real strong lean towards digital, AI, product platforms that index around that. And you're calling into the analog world of some of these sales organizations as you bring over mid and upper level execs. What have you noticed and what's your dialogue with these people as they're evaluating their career choices moving forward?
Sure, it's about the opportunity to move from what you've always known to what could be. And that's scary. It's scary because they haven't done it. They don't know the market as well as the market they've been in their whole careers. But if you can connect it somehow, right? So say, for example, it's a remote surgery platform, and they've been working in the OR or cath lab their whole life. Well, they know where these procedures exist. They just don't know sort of the telehealth, digital health portion. That can be taught. And I think about that with my own career, right? I didn't know anything about the executive search world, but I knew the med device world. So I come here, you teach me that part, and we're golden. So I use my own example when I'm talking to people about the opportunity that, hey, you've already got one part of the skill set, and then look at what can that do for your career? And that's when the conversation really gets interesting.
Yeah. When somebody looks at that transition that's going on in health tech right now, and it's a digital component, and when I say digital, it has an intelligence assigned to it, whether it's remote monitoring, whether it's telehealth, whether it's robotics. What are your thoughts on future-proofing your career as the med tech, health tech industry is not moving away from, but is expanding away from sort of a pure analog play when we think of the episodic world of device?
You want to be well-rounded, right? If it's between you and another individual in the future, they're going to look at who has the vast majority of experiences that they can pull from. So in the past, it was everybody's playing in the analog space, and if it's me against another person, who has the MBA, who doesn't? It's not that anymore. It's what have you done to prepare yourself for the evolution of where medicine is going. So if you have a gap on your resume where you haven't worked with a startup and you've always been at a strategic, go work for a startup. If you've always done sales, try your hand at product management or marketing. And now we're seeing that move from analog to digital because people want to have that on their resume, because most of the companies they're with currently are going in that direction anyway, either through acquisition or through creating their own products.
So as individuals consider career moves, invariably one of the top 3 or 4 ends up being money. And certainly it's important, right? We've got bills to pay and money to save and futures to think about. How have you thought it, now that you're sitting on this side of the desk, the money part of the equation in a career move?
Yeah, I mean, you can't look past it. It's important, but certainly shouldn't be the number one be-all, end-all. What other opportunities outside of compensation are there that can raise your value to a company? And we talked about it in the past. It's developing these skills that you couldn't get where you're at currently. But the other thing I want people to think about is, what can you get working with the people at this new company that you'll never get at your current company, right? Working side by side with the founder, with the CEO. And when they go to start their next company, who do you think they're going to take with them? All their A players from their current company. So really start thinking about, who do I want to partner myself with? Who do I want to surround myself with? Because that does determine your future.
That's a good answer there. You've been working now with a number of emerging tech startups, probably have been involved now with the C-suite exclusively, than maybe in your entire career previously.
For sure.
Observations?
Well, it's humbling. I realize that I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. I never thought I was, but now it's like blatantly obvious. You just meet with so many incredibly intelligent, visionary people. And the nice thing is they are also humble, because we've all kind of eaten a little crap in our lives, and that's what drives us, one way or the other. And you think that's always unique to yourself, and then you get to know people at a personal level and you realize, wow, she's like me, or he's like me. And when you get to sit side by side with them, I've been helping CEOs interview candidates for their open roles. That is just such a cool experience. And to miss out on that as an individual because you're comfortable, that's crazy to me now. But I wouldn't have known that before I got into this role and got to know these CEOs and founders, because being at Strategics for most of my career, I never even met the CEOs of my own companies, right? And here I get to meet all of them. So it's great.
Yeah. And that's why we enjoy the emerging tech organizations, especially because those CEOs are intimately involved and usually are an N of one from almost every single employee.
Yeah.
And to your point about who are you going to surround yourself with, can you imagine being a 3 to 5 year or a 7 to 10 year, and nearly every day you're bouncing ideas off of this CEO who has got massive experience, massive networking capabilities, massive insights. How quick do you learn when you're sitting next to a person like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a scientific word for that, right? Where you absorb it's almost like photosynthesis of the mind. Just being around that sort of knowledge on a constant basis. And it's not just the CEOs, it's who they brought into the company with them. It's their entire board. It's that ecosystem that you are now a part of. And something we talk about a lot, Joe, and in people's careers, they want to have a seat at the table, right? I know I always wanted that, and you're either an outspoken person and you demand it, or you're kind of quiet and you hope it comes to you. But either way, it usually doesn't happen because the table's so big and somebody either has to get promoted or retire. Well, that's not the case in the startup environment. You have a seat at the table from day one, and try to put a value on that.
That's a really good point. I've got 3 decades in this business, and I still try and keep a beginner's mindset. But you now have a beginner's mindset, right? You're in your first year. What are the things that you now have your arms wrapped around that people should be thinking about when they make that decision for a career move?
I'm realizing that what I thought I knew coming in, I really didn't know at all. And what I mean by that is we all have preconceived notions about where we're at currently and where we may want to go, or what we see on some of your clips or some of the Mullings Group excerpts out there. And what I've learned is don't think that you have all the answers, because as soon as you get exposure to something you've never had exposure to before, that's when you really learn. That's when you start to blossom in your thinking and your way of interacting and collaborating with others. All right, Joe, I have a question for you now. Career seekers, what would you tell somebody in 2022 that you may not have told them a couple years ago?
Well, gosh, the world of work's changed a lot over the last 2.5 years with the pandemic. And I think there's a few things. So the number one lesson that I learned recently is decide what you don't want to do. That's easier to do. Yeah. I've got a boy in college. I've got a boy going into high school. They're facing a pressure right now of, oh my God, what do I pick for the rest of my life? I'm like, no, relax. It's easier to decide what you don't want to do. Yeah. Right. So that's the number one, is if you're in your career or just going to university, decide what you don't want to do. Right. So that's one. Number two is, I know there's all kinds of dialogue right now about this flex and the work from home and the work from anywhere. I think it's a terrible mistake. Candidly, if I was in the workforce, especially beginning, I would be in that office 5 days a week. Okay. It's always good to enter a flex environment and have that option. Having said that, I would be sure that if I could, if you show up 5 days a week in the office, because leadership's in the office 5 days a week, you are going to get more opportunities and more shots on goal. It just happens. It's human nature. If you're in front of somebody, you're standing there, and both parties are competent, who do you think is going to get the head nod? Yeah. And so I would say it's cool if the culture's WFX across the board. It's a virtual company. May not matter that much, in fact. Yeah. But if it's an organization that's starting now to become less hybrid of remote, but still hybrid and more on par, be in the office 5 days a week. And I never thought I would have to say that 3 years ago. You got a job, try and be in the office. Right. Well, isn't that where a job is? Sure. Right. So I think those are the two things that I would give sort of counsel to.
So frequency and proximity.
Frequency, proximity, and then know what you don't want to do. Okay. Because at 20, what you think you want to do, you have no idea. It's the same person you're going to marry. It's the same tattoo you're going to get. Now, I'm sorry for the people who got married at 20 or happy. You're an outlier. Well, or you're a liar. But the person you probably picked to spend the rest of your life with at 20 is different at 40, is different at 60. And the tattoo you got at 20, the Bugs Bunny on your ankle at spring break, probably isn't showing real well at 40 or 60.
That's why you have sleeves, right? They're all cover-ups.
Well, no, yeah, they're all covered up. That's exactly right. That's right. Tweety Bird was here, but he's gone now.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Ryan, we're expanding dramatically here in Delray. We have an office in Cleveland that's expanding. We opened up Canada. We've got the UK office that's expanding, and we're heading to Israel for office expansion there as well. And we've ID'd that we want to go after medtech pros. We have found that learning search is one thing, but learning medtech, the functional roles in there, disease states, therapies, et cetera, is really hard. So we have been getting inundated, now that you've come here, with other professionals who are at that director level and are going, okay, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
But you said something to me when you first joined us, like, I would never have gone to work for a search firm, but I was going to go to TMG.
Yeah. I don't know if you realize this, I'm sure you do at this point. You're not viewed, and we're not viewed, I should say, as a search firm. It's subject matter expertise, right? You can talk the talk, you can walk the walk, and it's not just you, it's the entire firm. From our search operations team to the Dragonfly Stories team, everybody in the building understands and speaks that common language. And it's because they're all going to these events together, and they're not just showing up for cocktails and shaking hands. They're learning, right? And that's what I'm excited about next, is going to all those conferences that I went to as a med tech guy, and now I get to do it for the Mullings Group.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because there are individuals reaching out to us
Yeah.
who are rock star salespeople in med tech, but they're too salesy. And we have that discussion all the time in the organization, is we are a consulting firm.
Yeah.
We are not a sales organization. And we make sure that people are facilitators and educators and not salespeople, because we hold the responsibility of a career in our hands, and we take that heart attack serious. And when we give guidance, it's got to be with the best intentions in the world, not to make a placement.
Yes.
And so salespeople, if you're in the middle of giving guidance into somebody's career and it feels like you were an object being sold, that screams right away, and then absolutely does nobody any good and puts an entire family and life at peril. So we really do. So for those that are in the sales or marketing side of things, and you're interested in TMG, if you're salesy and shiny pants, sorry. and I mean that seriously, but I also mean it, sort of tongue in cheek, is what we do here is not sales. What we do here is not search.
Yeah, I would call it education.
Yeah.
I feel like an educator. When somebody calls me because they see an opportunity from one of these videos or something we posted, I get to educate them on the opportunity and see if it fits. Does it align with your lifestyle? Does it align with your compensation? Do you have a supportive spouse at home? All these things go into it. And I was never treated that way for the most part when I was recruited. I felt like a number. And so I never wanted to be that to someone else. So like you, when I talk to these individuals, I'm thinking about all these things and how I'm representing their life. And if they make the wrong bet on their career, that's going to impact their life. And I don't want to be the person to do that in a negative way. So I take it very seriously, and I love the educational aspect of TMG.
So Ryan, when you made the move over, there were a number of things that obviously you had a long relationship with TMG on the professional side, but you also had a presence on LinkedIn. You were a great sales leader, and you had all these tools that you have built up over your career. And then as you looked at TMG, and now that you've been here for a while, how are those tools serving you, and how are they potentially being amplified here at TMG?
Yeah, amplified, that's a great word. It's very complimentary what happens when you come from the space I was in med device, into a place like the Mullings Group. You get exceptional training, right? I learned from a search operations team that rivals a lot of sales operations teams that I've worked with. And it's nice because there's that comfort level there of, I've had that at these companies I've worked at, and I have it here. But it's more intimate, right? We have 40 people in the office, not hundreds of thousands. So you get that relationship. And then when I get to sit with you and Holly and Matt and Rick, there's that combined, 80 years of experience that I get to pull from on a daily basis. You're a text away, a phone call away. I can walk, your desk is right next to mine. That's a really cool thing. And so if people are ever worried about, well, I'm going to lose all these skills that I built up after all these years. No, you're not. You're actually going to intensify them and, to your word, amplify them with this type of move if you're open to it.
That's right. And we are super cognizant of that because that's the value, right? Having that discipline, that structure, that awareness, the therapy, disease state, functional. Now, like you said, you bring in Rick Jeffrey on, who's started and transacted 7 different startups, and he's our vice chair, and he sits in the office a couple days a week and brings that standing CEO gravitas. And you've got the Hollies, the Matts, the Joes that I think between the 3 of us are good for 5,000 placements and 5,000 that didn't go through. So like we sat in the pocket on all those. And you sit in on those meetings, you sit in on those strategies, you sit in on those C calls, and that's what we think is going to be attractive to the select few that have the courage to jump the tracks, to hyper leverage everything they've built in their careers to date.